From the latest on Caribbean cruises to kosher safaris, pilgrimages to Jewish Eastern Europe, and award-winning wines and international cuisine in sun-drenched Tel Aviv. Sit back and enjoy the trip with the travel edition of the Jerusalem Post podcast. A whole episode without you!
Is it the end? Are we falling out of friendship?
Oh gosh, I'll tell you what though, you're really lucky because before we recorded this segment, you'd already told me that you were going to be doing this one from your home because of different commitments you have. I don't want to say dying from a cold, that's really not fair, but I am absolutely yucky. So it's a good job we're not together. And you're drinking without me.
Yeah, I haven't got any of your nice wine though, so I've got myself a very lovely Kale Isla whiskey.
Oh, I see. Like that is it. How much does that cost the bottle?
It was a gift for my 21st birthday.
It must have had a lot of time to ferment or whatever it is that whiskey does.
It's no longer a 12-year-old.
We are in different parts of the wonderful city of Modi'in, both of us enjoying the company of our families. We're recording this in the middle of Euros. That's the main soccer competition of Europe. And Mark said he's not prepared to do this recording tomorrow because England are playing. So we're sort of squeezing this in between a couple of games that we want to see.
Tomorrow I shall be bonding with my young son, watching England lose to Denmark in a pub in Tel Aviv.
Folks, send us an email if he got it wrong. markdavidpod@gmail.com. You can also find us at markdavidpod across social media. Mark, what have we got cooked up for today?
Part of our Lonely Hearts holidays away from each other involves me taking 2 holidays.
You lucky so-and-so. Shall we leave it as a surprise where we're going? I know that the quiz questions will kind of give it away, but should we leave it as a surprise for later in the programme?
We can do.
Okay, and I also went away just one time, but mine was longer than his 2 together.
Would you have rather gone on yours or mine?
I'd have rather been with you, with my family, of course. I'd rather have been on mine, yeah, without doubt.
I'd rather have been on yours too.
Yeah,
but obviously with my family.
But you've got more money left in your bank account. My gosh, it cost a pretty penny. Anyway, we'll get on to the destinations in a minute. Should we do the quiz questions?
We should. Question number 1. Eilat sits right at the southern tip of Israel. Next to Eilat is a Jordanian resort. What is it called? Okay,
I think we can guess where you went. Well, actually, it could be one of 2 places, really, couldn't it, on the basis of that question? Yes, thank you for nodding.
For
yes.
Those of you watching at home, the defendant nodded.
Guilty as charged. And question number 2. This pre-Roman people are believed to have introduced to the place we call Italy the chariot, grapes, wine, terracotta roof tiles, gladiator games, and the toga. Toga. What was the name of this people?
Well, that's easy. It's the Chinese. They make everything. The answers are at the end of the pod.
To talk the latest news in Israel, the Jewish world, and everything in between.
This is the J-Post Podcast. I'm Tamar Uriel-Beery, Deputy Editor-in-Chief of the Jerusalem Post.
And I'm Tzvika Klein, Editor-in-Chief of the Jerusalem Post.
And I'm Sarah Ben-Nun, Night Editor at the Jerusalem Post. Join us as we bring some of the most impactful voices to bring you into what it means to be Jewish, to be Israeli today.
Every week, we bring you with us into the newsroom in every sense.
Stop being so dramatic. This is just our coffee break.
You can find us every Thursday on jpost.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll see you there.
Yalla, bye.
You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition with Mark somewhere over there and David somewhere over here. Given your question at the start of the pod about the southern neighbour or the neighbour in Jordan to Eilat, but given the current political situation, I'm assuming you didn't cross over the border into the town named Beep.
You gave away the answer there. I quite like going to the lovely resort of Beep.
Yeah, how do they spell that in Arabic?
I'll tell you at the end of the podcast.
So you went to Eilat?
I did, and from Eilat, I could see the resort of Beep, which has an enormous flag sitting over the Gulf of Eilat or the Bay of Eilat, because they do like a great big flag in the Middle East.
The whole Muslim world, and we were just in Azerbaijan. You can hear that podcast. I'm guessing it was our last episode. Anyway, our guide told us they're in the process of erecting the world's largest flag. I've been to Dubai, I've been to Abu Dhabi. Both times I was there, they were saying, we're in the process of erecting the world's largest flag. Before we get on to the city itself, what about transport? In the fact file in a few minutes, we'll talk about the airlines and whatever, but what did you do and why?
We did a bit of everything. We took the bus down from Tel Aviv. We went on a Thursday evening. I finished work, made it to the central bus station in Tel Aviv, which I think we've visited on a podcast many, many moons ago. It takes about 4 hours on the bus, and you get a couple of stops along the way. It's reasonably easy to do, and you end up at Eilat Central bus station, which was 2 minutes walk for our hotel for the evening. The bus, Egged, great.
I'm assuming it's a whole lot cheaper than flying.
On a Thursday evening, it's about a quarter of the price. Flights back on a Sunday were only twice the price, so we flew back.
I'm interested in the bus because people get the idea of the flight. The flight's, 30, 45 minutes from Eilat to Tel Aviv?
The flight's 45 minutes plus another 5 minutes as you had to leave Israel, hit the Mediterranean, turn around and come back. You wait at the airport for 90 minutes to 2 hours. You've got a half-hour journey to get to the airport, and then you've got to get back from Terminal 1, which is now open, to Terminal 3. All in all, it took 4.5 to 5 hours.
Which one's quicker? I'm assuming the flight's quicker, but marginally so.
The flight was marginally quicker. I think I preferred the bus because you had a little bit more room. And being on a plane with people coming back from Eilat, it was really noisy. I don't think I've ever been on a flight like it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fly Israel. So that's the getting there, which I think is kind of interesting and important, and because you did something a little bit different. What about where you stayed?
We got there Thursday night, and our hotel was available from Friday. We stayed at a little lodging near the bus station. It cost $50 for the evening. We essentially plonked our bags down, went to sleep, woke up, left.
And it was clean, it was fine.
Clean, lovely, room for 3 people. I went with my wife and my son. They were very friendly.
Your wife and son?
No, the people there, my wife and son, horrific. Not really. I love them.
Go on, tell the truth.
No, I do love them. And the place was lovely. It served a purpose. We weren't actually staying in central Eilat where most of the hotels were. We went down to Coral Beach, which is much quieter, where the beaches are nicer, the water's nicer, and you go swimming with fish down there. So I much prefer Coral Beach.
Now, I don't want to ask this question as a pejorative, but right now there are lots and lots of internally displaced people from southern Israel and northern Israel in Eilat. Is it something that you were very aware of? Did it cause any problems? Was it a very positive experience, or did you not really sense it at all?
Didn't sense it at all. At our hotel, I'm not sure anybody was staying there as a refugee anymore. I know some of the hotels still have people. Certainly in Tel Aviv, some of the hotels are still 70 to 75% full with refugees. But no, the hotel was running like a normal hotel.
What do you get up to? Is it just, as they call it in Hebrew, beten and gav, which is basically means stomach and back, which means just sunbathing?
There was a bit of that. The hotel had a lovely pool. We were 2-3 minutes walk from the sea down at Coral Beach. We went swimming in the sea. A tip that I should have learned was to take some water shoes because it's not a sandy beach, it's a rocky beach. But the sea was lovely. It's baking hot in Eilat. I mean, Israel is hot, but Eilat is another 5-6 degrees hotter. In Fahrenheit, probably 10-11 degrees Fahrenheit hotter.
It's drier.
It was definitely bearable, but it's warmer and you need to definitely take your factor 50 with you. But no, we were swimming in the sea and there were shoals of fish all around you. It's a really nice experience. The water's really clear. I'm not a snorkeler, but if you take a snorkel, you can see some wonderful stuff. So we did a lot of relaxing and swimming over Shabbat. We definitely ate plenty. We stayed at a hotel called the Prima Music, which was extraordinarily good value. I think it was about the second or third cheapest hotel on booking.com, which did dinner, bed and breakfast. So we were there for 2 nights.
Did you get out to any entertainment at all?
Saturday night was the Champions League final. We went into central Eilat. We walked round. A lot of the bars were charging minimums to come and sit there, which I thought was a little bit cheeky given how quiet Eilat has been over the last few months. But we found a bar that would allow us to sit and drink and watch the football. And then we also got out and did a bit of shopping. Eilat is VAT-free. A lot of shopping malls have been built there in the last 10 years. People go down there with their cars and suitcases and fill them up with electrical goods and everything else. I bought a nice pair of Crocs.
How long can you stay in Eilat for? I don't mean you can stay there forever, but how much is there for you to do in Eilat, around Eilat? So how long? I mean, is it a week, 2 weeks, a weekend?
I think for people coming from overseas, you know, the chance to go out for hummus, to go out for steak, to see Israeli music, Israeli dancing, would add a few more days to the trip. I was ready to go home after 3 days. We'd been to the underwater observatory. We went shopping. We went to the ice mall. There's a show at one of the Israel hotels, which is like Cirque du Soleil, and is worth going to see. I think it's called the Wow Show. I think a week is a maximum for Eilat.
Mark Gordon, thank you for joining us on the podcast. Eilat Fact File. Israel and Arkia operate multiple daily flights from Ben Gurion International to Ramon Airport. The airport is 20 kilometres or 13 miles from downtown Eilat. You can take buses 30, 31 and 50 to the heart of the city. Egged buses operate regular routes between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem Central bus stations and Eilat. The best hotels in Eilat include the Royal Beach, Harrods Vitalis, Dan and Queen of Sheba. For mid-range hotels, try the Prima Music, Yamsuf by Israel and the Dan Panorama. Eilat has an arid desert climate. It's warm or hot year-round. Daytime temperatures average around 22 Celsius 71 Fahrenheit from December to February and can reach upwards of 40 degrees Celsius or 104 Fahrenheit June through August. The currency is the Israeli shekel. 100 Israeli shekels are worth $27 as of June 2024. Eilat restaurants specialising in fish and seafood include Ola, Pastori, Last Refuge and Whale. There's also a good selection of kosher restaurants including Lalo, Ranch House, Omer's and Melody. A great kosher breakfast can be found at the quirky Via Clara Cafe on Derech HaArava. Eilat is a VAT tax-free zone, meaning shopping is a major attraction. Look out for Mal Hayam, the big centre, the Ice Mall and the Queen of Sheba Mall.
And now the news with the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition. United and Delta Airlines resume flights to Israel. Delta launched flights for the first time since October the 7th, 2023, with a daily flight from New York. United, which paused after Iran attacked Israel in April, recommenced daily flights from Newark, New Jersey. El Al operates more than 50 flights per week to the US.
With incoming tourism to Israel struggling to recover, the Israeli government is introducing an additional hurdle to jump: electronic travel authorization. Complete with a charge of 25 shekels or $6.70, visitors to the country won't be able to enter without it. The scheme was piloted for US visitors in June and will be piloted for other visa-exempt countries in July before becoming mandatory in August.
Israel's Ben Gurion Airport Terminal 1 finally reopened, and as promised, Ryanair returned to Israel too. The company refused to operate from Terminal 3 because of higher charges, but following its first flight from Paphos, Cyprus, the low-cost airline intends flying to Tel Aviv from Athens, Berlin, Milan, Bari, Malta and Budapest. If all goes to plan, another 16 routes will start again in October 2024.
Last year we told you the story of the 3-year cruise. Now there's a cruise that makes that look like a mini break. Villa V is offering the chance to own your own residence at sea. If owners want a break from the waves, units can be rented out in segments to others. The ship comes complete with business centre, golf facilities, fitness centre, 3 restaurants, 5 bars and a luxury pool.
A new therapeutic hotel has opened in the Swiss Alps, complete with kosher food. Nestled in the mountains near Lake Geneva, Clinic Les Alpes offers post-trauma treatments for those affected by the war. Translation services into Hebrew are also available. It doesn't come cheap, with weekly rates from some 180,000 Israeli shekels. That's $45,000.
doing this under protest, David. You went on holiday without me.
I know. I actually have a life outside of Mark.
They look nice, though, your holiday.
It was a lot of fun. The entire life of my children, they were born in Israel, they grew up in Israel. The only place that we ever really took them were England and the east coast of the United States, because we had to go to visit our grandparents. It's something that a lot of people who make Aliyah, who move to Israel, do, because your contact with your family, and especially if they're older and not able to travel, is you going to them. My wife and I, with the kids, never been on a real proper week-long holiday on our own.
Without me.
Without you.
Where did you go then, David?
We went to Tuscany in Italy.
Ooh, Italy. I love Italy. I'd really like to have gone to Italy with you.
Well, you and I actually have been to Tuscany before when we went to Florence many, many moons ago. We went for a football game in Rome, and we took a really quick train up to Florence. It took, an hour and a half, 2 hours to get across, and we spent an amazing day in Florence. And I have to tell you, regarding Florence, I went with the kids and Debbie, my wife. I think when we went, it was winter, and it was pretty quiet. And the other time I'd been to Florence, way back when I was a student in the 4th century BCE, it was also very quiet. This time, and I went in May, oh my gosh, the people. You could not move. So the famous bridge, the Ponte Vecchio, absolutely wall-to-wall of human beings. It's amazing it doesn't collapse into the Arno River.
I do remember our trip to Florence. We were there for the day. We managed to do half of the city, half of the sites in a day, and still make it to a sports bar by the end of the evening.
We went to the Uffizi, you and I, which is, if you're looking for a gallery to visit, I think I'm right in saying Renaissance art, because I am an ignoramus where this is concerned, then it is truly one of the world's great gems. This time in Florence, we didn't go to the Uffizi, but we went to the Pitti Palace. And if you're looking for a smaller collection of artwork, then the Pitti Palace is an extremely good recommendation.
No, I love the Uffizi. It's one of the chances that I had to stand in front of one of the classics, The Birth of Venus by Botticelli,
Ooh.
and just like take it in. One of these pictures you've seen everywhere, and there you are standing in front of it. Tell me a bit about your itinerary.
We flew into Milan. You can also fly into Rome, because Tuscany really, if you're saying Florence to Pisa is the middle part of Tuscany, then you're really halfway between Rome and Milan. So we rented a car in Milan. We drove down. We stayed in a tiny, it wasn't even a village. It was a hamlet, and we were halfway up a mountain between Pisa and Lucca. Mentioning Lucca, I would say it's one of the gems of Italy that is often overlooked by tourists who are very happy to go Pisa to Siena or Pisa to Florence.
You mean they overlook it?
Oh, dearie me. It was beautiful. One of the things that we didn't do, the kids actually fell asleep and missed Lucca, but one of the things you can do, it's one of the most intact walls of a city anywhere in the world, and it's a 4-kilometre, which is about a 2 to 3 mile circuit, and you can rent bicycles of all different types. They have tandems, they have bikes for 4 people, and you can cycle around it, and it's just this gorgeous park around the city, and the city is medieval, intact, superb.
So you said Pisa.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do the stereotypical Leaning Tower of Pisa picture where you're holding it up with a finger?
Now, it's very interesting that you say that, and you know the answer already because I sent you a video. The only thing that was missing was me saying the word sheep. And please, if you're listening to this, forgive me if it's something that you've done where you try to hold up the tower or something like this. But I was walking through this magnificent square, stunning, stunning buildings. The cathedral, the baptistry is phenomenal. And it's almost like so many, dozens if not hundreds of people turning their backs on these magnificent architectural wonders, and all they want to do is have that Instagram moment. So I filmed all these people as I was walking by them, and all I was thinking to myself was sheep, 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 sheep.
Were you counting them?
I fell asleep by the end, yeah. Pisa, a bit like, so you mentioned the Botticelli, and I think the classic example is the Mona Lisa or La Joconde in the Louvre, or the Night Watch in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. And people just walk past phenomenal art just because they want to have that one picture with the smiling lady or whatever it is. And I felt very much it's the same in Pisa. The stunning architecture throughout the city, so much history, so many stories, and people just completely ignore it just to get that one Instagram moment. I get very frustrated.
Was there any good wine?
So here's a chance for our kosher listeners to enjoy a bit of Chianti. Chianti is a stunning region right in the heart of the Tuscany region. And there is a kosher winery. Not only a kosher winery, it has a kosher restaurant, and you can do kosher cooking classes, and the food was excellent. The name of the place is Terra di Seta. It's near Siena. It's about 20 minutes, half an hour from Siena. Absolutely fascinating, very worth a visit, and an excellent tipple.
I'm getting more and more jealous as time goes on. So tell me another highlight.
We went to a couple of the hilltop towns. The famous one is San Gimignano. Probably the main reason it's famous is because it has towers. People lived in square towers. I guess they look a bit like a church tower where the bell would be at the top. So you'd have 1 or 2 rooms on each level. There'd be 4 or 5 levels, and they were fortified, and they were also a symbol of the wealth of those families. And there were still 7 or so of those in San Gimignano. My wife and my kids preferred San Gimignano. I preferred the second hilltop town that we went to, which is Volterra. And I think the reason I preferred it, it felt less touristy, so it didn't have as many towers. It had a bit more authenticity for me, and you felt more like you were mixing with a local Italian population.
Italy is the home of art. It's the home of good food, good wine, beautiful scenery. What about music? Did you get any music in?
We did. Well, did you already know the answer to this?
Of course.
Okay.
You wrote it on the question for me.
The question that we don't have in front of us. Yeah, so this was another reason that I fell in love with Luca. I talked to Debbie about whether we should go to some sort of classical concert, and the kids were pulling faces. And we decided, you know what, let's skip it. And suddenly we're walking through Luca down a narrow alley, and I thought I could hear through a loudspeaker some opera. It was a male voice, a tenor. And we thought we'd follow the voice and see where it came out. And actually was a live opera concert with about 8 singers, a 16-piece orchestra in the middle of a square. And I don't know why they were there, but it was a free concert. We were there for a good half an hour. It was stunning. It was professional. It was amazing. And it was bringing art to the people.
How was your accommodation?
The accommodation was absolutely fab. We did this through Airbnb. It's a place called La Lucatola. It's an Italian wife and a English husband, and they have 2 cottages with a stunning view. You can see all the way to Pisa from the place. It had a pool. It was just a beautiful place. It was a couple of 100 years old. We had in our wall from the outside a pizza oven.
Did you make pizza?
We didn't, but the neighbouring cottage did, and it just warmed up our entire house. It was fantastic. It was amazing, and it was in the middle of nowhere. On the Saturday, 12 o'clock, we hear church bells. So we just thought it's going to be 12 bells. I was counting the bells all the time. The bells didn't stop, and it was a wedding. And from where we were, this is about 1 kilometre away, 3/4 of a mile. After the wedding, we heard the clapping and the cheering, and we heard all of the singing and the dancing for about 4 or 5 hours, and it was just wonderful.
Did you give them a nice present?
I don't know what to say. No.
Meanie.
What I would say, really important about Italy, and this is probably as good a place as any to stop, is get away from those heavy tourist areas of Pisa and Florence, because they really are seriously mobbed with people. Go into the little villages, and just by saying buongiorno and grazie, have a macchiato, have an espresso, sit in a local little cafe, smile at the people, and you will find instantly, even if there is a language barrier, that you're making a whole group of new friends.
But don't wear the wrong football shirt in the wrong city.
Very true.
Tuscany, Italy fact file. There are airports in Florence and Pisa for flights from around Europe. National carriers tend to fly into Florence, while Pisa serves more low-cost airlines. From Israel and North America, you can fly directly into Milan or Rome with numerous airlines. From Milan and Rome, you can either take public transport or rent a car for the 3-hour or so journey into Tuscany. Trains and buses are great if you are only planning on visiting the region's main cities, but if you are heading out into the countryside, either rent a car or join an organised bus trip. Beware that cars are not allowed in some downtown areas. In Florence, for example, you will be fined if you have not arranged permission through your hotel to bring your car into the area. Booking.com reviewers recommend the following hotels amongst others. In Florence, the Villa Cora, Villa Tolomei Hotel and Resort, and the Hotel Bernini Palace. In Siena, the Grand Hotel Continental Siena, the 4 Points by Sheraton, and the Il Battistero Siena Residenza d'Epoca. And in Pisa, they suggest the Grand Hotel Duomo, Palazzo Ferrocci, and Hotel Bologna. David stayed at La Luca Tolla between Pisa and Lucca via the Airbnb app. The currency in Italy is the euro. $100 will buy you just over 93 euros as of late June 2024. Tuscany has a Mediterranean climate with hot, dry summers and mild winters. The hottest month of the year is July with an average daily temperature of 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. January is the coldest month with temperatures averaging 7 Celsius, 45 Fahrenheit along the coast and a little colder inland. Tuscan food is based on roasted meats, particularly wild game. Side dishes often feature beans or sautéed spinach or chicory in olive oil and garlic. For kosher food in Florence, the dairy Ruth's and meaty baguetto are next to the Great Synagogue. If you are not staying in Florence, we recommend buying your kosher supplies in Rome or Milan before heading to Tuscany. The excellent Terra di Seta Kosher Chianti Winery near Siena has a kosher kitchen you must reserve ahead of time. For more on kosher food, check out jewishtuscany.com. There are several agroturismo farms offering exclusively vegetarian or vegan menus. Reserve in advance.
Discover the future with Inside Israeli Innovation. I'm Eve Young from the Jerusalem Post, bringing you exclusive insights from Israel's top innovators. Each week, we dive into the latest trends in tech, business, and beyond with interviews from the brightest minds in the industry. Whether it's cutting-edge startups or revolutionary tech breakthroughs, Inside Israeli Innovation is your front row seat to the startup nation. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform and stay ahead of the curve. Inside Israeli Innovation, where innovation meets inspiration.
Outside of Buenos Aires, where would you recommend visiting?
Tell us why you've got a passion for Jewish history as an author.
Is there something unique here that you won't see anywhere else in Georgia or even the world?
Why on earth would you take this incredible boat and launch it in Israel, of all places?
Has David Hasselhoff been to the David Hasselhoff Museum?
You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition with Mark Gordon and David Harris. Mark, before we give away the location of your second trip, I want to know, while you were on your journey, did you meet anybody called Ding Dong?
Ding Dong has gone. There is no Ding Dong.
That is so sad.
It's sad, but he's still around. He's just on a container ship.
Something that we've learned as we go on cruises and other little jaunts is when somebody has a name that is largely unpronounceable to us ignoramuses in the West, because they have an Asian name, they will often take on either a Western name, be called Chris or Tony or whatever, or in the case of Mano Cruise, they take on rather interesting epithets, such as the wonderful waiter that Mark and I met a few years ago, and Mark has subsequently met, Ding Dong. So I'm absolutely gutted to learn of his demise, at least in terms of Mano.
So I did ask the hotel manager on the ship, where's Ding Dong? So he called over the kitchen head who came in and said, Ding Dong is now working on container ship, and then told me Ding Dong's real name, and it wasn't that unpronounceable.
What was it?
I can't remember.
For those who are really not interested in the demise of Ding Dong, what is Mano Cruise?
Mano Cruise is an Israeli-owned cruise line that runs out of Haifa port.
Is that it?
That's what Mano is.
We've got an Israeli cruise line running out of Haifa. Any competition this year?
None whatsoever. And in fact, Mano was the first passenger cruise line to leave Haifa since October the 7th. It started its summer season on May the 30th. And I was lucky enough to be, I think, on the second or third cruise of the season.
Given the desire of Israelis to cruise, I'm guessing because of the war and the fact that there aren't the other cruise lines departing from Haifa, the ship was absolutely packed.
It was full. There was no room. And at the reception, there was a sign saying, please don't ask for an upgrade. The ship is full.
It's not the biggest ship in the world, but do you feel that there's a lot of people, or do you have your own space?
There's plenty of space on board. The ship itself used to be owned by Norwegian Cruise Lines and then Celestial Cruises. It was called Majesty. It has 750 bedrooms and it can take up to 2,000 passengers. There were probably around 1,600 passengers there. All the bedrooms were full. I think the only time you really felt that there was a crowd was at meal times.
I'm glad you brought up food. From what I remember, and I travelled with you on Mano with our families on the older, smaller ship, but I thought that the food on that trip was very good. Does it still have that good taste, the variety?
Yeah, I think the food is excellent. It's as good as you'll find on any other cruise ship in the main dining room. I was actually lucky enough to sit on the captain's table.
Woo!
We had the same food as everybody else, but it was brought to us, so we didn't have to queue. And accompanied by a very nice Chardonnay, I might add.
Now, we also should point out, it's important for a lot of our listeners, it's all kosher, everything on board.
I think when Mano first started, they had a kosher supervisor during the week. And then when they sailed on Shabbat, it wasn't kosher. So the weekend cruises were not kosher and the weekday cruises were. Now it's all 100% kosher. And if you want a higher standard of kashrut, they're able to provide that too, as well as gluten-free, vegetarian and vegan.
Again, for our religious listeners, Jewish religious listeners, there's also synagogues on board and religious lectures and so on.
Yeah, and the synagogue seemed to be very, very busy when we went past it. Obviously, I didn't go in there, but I walked past it a number of times. I think there were a lot of religious passengers for this trip, more than I remember last time.
Let's get on to the itinerary. 3 days?
3 days, 2 nights. It was a very quick cruise. Larnaca is not far away. That was the only stop.
Cyprus.
It's actually a new destination, I think, for Mano, because in the past, Larnaca had closed down their terminal. They've reopened it and they're planning on building a new terminal there in the next 2 years. As we were in dock, there was a very large ship from Virgin Voyages. It couldn't come into dock, so it had to bring people over in small boats, whereas we were able to dock in the centre of Larnaca.
Lucky you. So what's the centre of Larnaca like?
It's very nice. If you turn left out of the port and walk 15 minutes, you're at a beautiful seaside resort called Finikudis, as well as lots of cafes and bars. There's a medieval fort there. And there is the burial place, supposedly, of St. Lazarus, who was brought back from the dead by Jesus, but clearly not forever, and then was buried in Larnaca.
He joins St. Matthias, who we met not too long ago, just outside Batumi in Georgia. Now, I remember when we did Mano, you and I won a competition for being as indecent as is humanly possible on a boat where there are males, females, religious folks, etc. Did you get up to any mischief this time without me?
Yes, it's hard to believe that we would win a prize for being the filthiest people on the boat.
That's not actually what we won the prize for. It was for being the funniest couple.
Do you want to describe what we were doing with a balloon?
I'm in the middle of writing a chapter about that. More details on that, I guess, at some point in about 5 years' time.
I think the entertainment had gone slightly upmarket. Going on this cruise, I had the feeling that somebody of a more international bent had taken over. The entertainment was slightly less Israeli than it was in the past. There were still game shows and fun things to do, but the main act was a dance troupe and singing troupe from Cuba. There was a band from the Philippines, as well as an Israeli singer who was doing songs only in Hebrew, and Amy Winehouse, which is an exemption that you get.
No Greek bouzouki players?
Oh, yeah, obviously. You have to have the Greek bouzouki player Kostas, and there was another guy called Spiros on the piano.
You didn't actually answer my question.
What was your question?
Did you get up to any mischief?
No, I was very well behaved, which is quite rare. I did get a special treat, though. I got to go on the bridge.
Arrested?
No, that's the brig. I went on the bridge with a few other people, and we got to see how the ship works, and you get a lovely view of the front of the ship. And I said to the staff captain, Michalis, how often do people come and do the Titanic thing where they stick their arms out like Kate Winslet? And he said, thankfully, not that much anymore. And just as he said that, somebody goes to the front of the boat and sticks their arms out. Gotta love people.
Mark Gordon, our roving reporter, thank you very much for bringing us your passion, your family, and your love of all things Israeli.
My pleasure, David.
Is myth like what someone is before they become a myth is?
Have we just come back from a winery and we're a little bit sicker?
This is the most bizarre tourist attraction in Israel, I reckon.
I'm going for a steak. Let's hope it will love me tender.
A juniper bush! A juniper bush!
And he's buried here and in Jerusalem, possibly. There's a bird behind me. I need to run, but I've got no legs.
You're listening to the Jerusalem Post podcast travel edition with Mark Gordon and David Harris.
And now the end is near. Sorry, I'm still doing my karaoke from the Mano Cruise.
Oh, you did karaoke?
No, there was no karaoke, actually.
No karaoke. Oh, that's why you said it's upmarket.
Yeah.
That's a bit posh for you if there's no karaoke.
No karaoke in Hebrew or in English.
Or Greek.
Well, obviously, but there's the bouzouki if you're feeling lonely.
I do love Mano. I do love. And of course, there are many other wonderful cruise lines out there as well. Currently not sailing from Israel, though. Should we say some thank yous?
Yes, I'd like to thank David Harris and his family for going on holiday to Italy.
I'd like to thank Mark Gordon and his lovely wife and son for not heading to Jordan, where there's a place called Beep, but going to Eilat and Mano and talking all about it for us. Thank you.
And a very brief thank you to Mano for looking after me. I think they got wind that I was on the ship, which is why I went to see the captain and see the bridge.
It's normally you who gets wind.
Let's not go there. If you enjoyed listening to this show, then subscribe and give it a 5-star rating and share it with your friends.
If you don't see the word subscribe where you're listening to this, you might see the word follow. It's basically the same thing. Doesn't cost anything, and it helps us to just get a little bit more popular and would be appreciated. Quiz questions and answers, Mark?
Question number 1. Next to Eilat, there's a Jordanian resort. What's it called? And the answer is, David?
Beep.
Correct. And that's spelled B-E-E-B. Actually, no, it's Aqaba. A-Q-A-B-A.
Have you been to Aqaba?
Nearly. Probably about 2 miles away.
I've been to Aqaba. It's okay. It's not bad. I think a lot of the Arab world was trying to invest in Aqaba to make it an equivalent to Eilat. It's not there yet, but there's still plenty to do and see. It's a nice place, but no kosher food.
And on a very clear day, you can see down the Gulf to Saudi Arabia, where they're starting work on building the most enormous Red Sea resort. One day.
Inshallah. And question number 2. This pre-Roman people are believed to have introduced to the place we call Italy the chariot, grapes, wine, terracotta roof tiles, gladiator games, and the toga. What was the name of this people? Mark?
Were they called Giuseppe and Gianluca?
You know the answer, don't you?
Is it the Etruscans?
It is the Etruscans, after whom Tuscany is named, but I've no idea what happened to the R.
I was going to say, why is it not called Tuscany?
Yes, I've no idea, but supposedly that's who it's named after. And nobody knows what happened to the Etruscans. They simply died out, and nobody knows why, what happened. And all we're left with, really, is the Etruscan art that tells their story.
I blame the internet.
Well, that wraps that up then.
It does indeed. This is what it's like, by the way, when David and I go on holiday. We run out of things to say after about 10 minutes. That's why we've got a podcast.
It's like being married. Oh, my gosh. Oh, I shouldn't really say that on air, really. I'll be sleeping on the porch tonight. Good night, folks.
Good night. I love my wife.